Campbell Newman was today officially sworn in as Premier of Queensland after one of the most stunning electoral victories ever seen in Australia, vowing to get down to business fast. Labor is in disarray as it sets about trying to form an effective opposition. John Taylor reports.
Campbell Newman's push to be Premier, whilst not even a Member of Parliament, was either going to be the smartest thing the Conservatives ever did or the dumbest. Now it appears to be genius.
I will well and truly serve the people of Queensland in the office of Premier.
Campbell Newman today was sworn in as Premier after crushing the Labor Party. Queensland's Parliament has been transformed. Before Saturday's election, Labor held 51 seats in the state's only chamber, 20 more than the Liberal National Party. Now the LNP is predicted to have 77, leaving Labor with a predicted 8. With these sorts of numbers, Campbell Newman is on track to be Premier for at least 2 terms. As he claimed victory, the former Brisbane Lord Mayor and Army officer promised his government would conduct itself with grace, humility and dignity.
Tonight I acknowledge that many of you have never voted for the Liberal Party, never voted for the National Party before and never voted for the LNP. So I thank you for your support. It's an honour that you would trust us with this responsibility by handing us that vote. Thank you.
Anna Bligh was Australia's first woman elected Premier. Now her departing legacy is leading her party to its worst ever defeat. She won her seat, but yesterday announced her resignation.
I simply don't believe that Labor can develop an effective opposition or rebuild from this point and from this defeat if it has me as part of its public face and in its ranks.
Campbell Newman has had an enormous victory, but is such a crushing win good for democracy?
Look, I'll leave that to the commentators and particularly the political academics, how that works, but it's really about how we conduct ourselves. And I've made some strong commitments about the way we intend to conduct ourselves in government, and I'm going to hold the team, whether they be the backbenchers or the ministers, to account in terms of the way that we behave as a government. Let's see how we go.
It's believed Anastasia Palaszczuk is going to have the unenviable task of leading Labor in opposition. The former Transport Minister still formally has to have the approval of caucus, even though that seems too big a word for what's left of Labor. Virtual unknown Curtis Pitt from the state's far north is another Labor MP joining her in opposition.
Well, I'm certainly someone who's going to have to play a role, like all of the other caucus colleagues, because there's going to be so few of us. We're all going to have to carry quite a burden, but to make sure that we're going to be presenting ourselves not only as the building blocks of a future alternative government in Queensland, but of course also one that was an opposition that is going to keep a Campbell Newman-led government honest.
But the larger question confronting Labor is, how did it get to this? Longevity is part of it, but many are pointing to a key decision of Ms Bligh's premiership.
Queensland, not for sale!
Just after Anna Bligh's historic 2009 victory, she announced a suite of multi-billion-dollar asset sales. It surprised many and prompted fierce union outrage. And Labor State Secretary Anthony Chisholm says that marked the end of government.
I think the election result was heading this way for basically 2.5 years. So our own internal polling showed that we were heading for a significant loss.
Accepted. Oh, Campbell, what a tangled web you weave.
Labor's campaign was at first relentlessly negative, then ended with a plea for sympathy. Anthony Chisholm has no regrets for attacking the integrity of Campbell Newman and his family.
It was the only option we had in terms of closing the gap. If we continued on the path we were going, we were heading for a massive, massive defeat. We owed it to Labor people and Labor supporters to do everything we could to close the gap. The fact is that was working. Mr Newman managed to trump it and jump all over it at the end, and certainly it cost us.
You've said that this election marks the end of the car-beating model. But what do you mean? A shift to the left?
I think what you see is that the traditional form of of conservative economic management, tough on law and order, focus on education and service delivery, which was built up by sort of Carr, Beattie, Bracks, I think has gone by the wayside, especially as you see we're out of government across Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland now.
What replaces it?
Well, that's, I think, the challenge for the future. I think for state Labor parties, there needs to be an ideological divide between us and the Tories at the state level. It can't just become about service delivery, because if it's about service delivery, all you will be doing is waiting for the other side to stuff up and then capitalise.
In a strange postscript, billionaire Clive Palmer, who is also a key supporter of the LNP, today thanked the government, the Greens and the media for extensively covering his comments last week about the CIA funding the Green movement. Today, Mr Palmer was trying to give the impression it was all a ploy.
That took a great lot of attention of some of the negative aspects of the election. That was a very good thing. And we saw our Premier sail through with a wonderful positive attitude in the last 3 weeks.
And a very familiar name is about to enter local politics in Brisbane. Beattie. Heather Beattie. Peter Beattie's wife.
You really got to have an effective, strong voice. And I can tell you, having been married to her for a long time, it's a pretty powerful voice. It scares me, so maybe that'll happen at City Hall.
But if you say so, that's a very interesting development. I'll be supporting Vicky Howard, who's been campaigning for about 2 years, who's a member of Graham Quirk's LNP team.
But Campbell Newman is the man with the massive mandate, and he's in a hurry to start.
We do have a mandate for change. We've got a mandate for all the policies we put out there prior to the election, and we're going to move at the greatest, fastest rate to implement change in Queensland, and we make no apologies for that.